Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. Today I'll show you how I made this antiqued necklace. I begin by taking some scraps. I am using some scraps from the previous video, and if you are interested in learning how to make that, I'll leave a link for it in the description box below. You can use any scraps. It will work just as well. I'm just going to chop it up into pretty fine pieces. Once I've done that, we'll just break them up, any large chunks that are stuck together, and then give it a nice good mixing. Next, I'm going to use some of this wax paper. This will catch all of my little messies that will be happening in a minute. I'll place all of my scraps that I've cut up onto that wax paper. And I'm going to wear some gloves for protection. I'm going to use some black paint. You could actually use any color you want. I just thought black would work best with this. Put on a generous amount on your scrap clay. And then you can use a tool or your fingers and mix it really thoroughly so all pieces are coated in your paint. Once mixed, go ahead and spread it out on your piece of paper. This will help it dry a little bit faster. And you can put that aside for now and let it dry. Next, I'm going to use some of this black clay. You can use any brand you like. Just going to take a chunk of it off. And then condition and roll it out. Next, I'm going to use some of these alcohol inks. These are a metallic alcohol inks. If you're interested in that, you can check the description box below. It comes with a couple different colors. I'm going to use the copper. You could probably use any of the other colors in there too. You could experiment and try different ones. Be sure to shake it up really well before you use it, and then just spread it all over your rolled out piece of black clay. Once it's thoroughly coated and dried, which doesn't take long, just use a stencil. I'm using this stencil. I got a whole bunch of those online. You can check the description box below if you're interested in those. You can use any kind of stencil you want. I just liked this pattern. First, I will place it on my clay, and then I will just take a roller and roll it out. Using pretty good pressure, you do want all of your clay underneath to rise up in between all of those slats from your stencil. Be sure to get the edges pretty good too. Just going to press them down with my fingers. Then just take the edge of your tissue blade and begin slicing off any clay that rises up above the stencil. Save all of these scraps. We will use them in just a little bit. And then you can peel it off for the reveal. You can leave it like this, or you can continue on to the next steps here. Either way will work. It does come out with a very nice pattern, and I do like it. But I further want to kind of distort it. First, I'm going to wipe off all of that excess clay that might be stuck on my stencil. And then I'll place it back on my clay, but just at a different angle. Not in the same position it was previously. Once you have it situated on there, however you want it to look. And again, press down pretty hard until the clay starts coming up between the slats. And again, just take the edge of your tissue blade and scrape away all of that excess clay. Then you could peel it away. You'll see it kind of further distorted the image of the stencil, which I kind of liked. Didn't really want it to have too much of a shape. You can do this as many times as you would like. Be sure to save all those scraps. Next, I'm going to take some more of that copper metallic ink and just start dabbing it all over the surface of my clay. And then I'm going to take the stencil once again and place it randomly over my clay. And this is just to further distort and to kind of give it a little bit of a raised pattern. I'm not pressing really hard, but just hard enough so that it comes up slightly in between all of the cracks and crevices. As you can see here, when I tilt it, that you can see part of it popping up. And then very gently peel it away from your wax paper or even your scrap of paper that you used. Flip it over, and again I'm going to use that same metallic color, and then just give it a nice gentle rub all over the surface of the black clay. By now my paint has dried on my little scraps that I cut up earlier. I'm going to transfer that to a cleaner piece of wax paper. And because the paint is dry and the clay will no longer stick to itself, I'm going to use a little bit of Bacon Bond to get it to adhere to itself once more. Just put a generous coating on there and then start mixing. Once you got it pretty good and mixed, begin pressing it together so that it is stuck together and flattened into a shape like this. Take the edge of your tissue blade and just begin shaving off the very top layer of one of the sides of the clay to reveal the beautiful clay underneath. And this is mine once I am done. Just going to give it a gentle roll, and that's just to flatten any pieces that might be sticking up. I do want my clay surface to be rather smooth. And that's just the angle from the side. You can see how thick it is. I'm going to use my tissue blade and cut away a shape. It's kind of a rectangular shape. Then I'm going to trim up the sides. And to make them even, that one side is just a little lopsided. I'm just going to cut away a little bit more. I'm going to place that on my clay that I used the alcohol ink on. I'm going to try to place it directly in the center, or as close to the center as possible. Begin folding up the sides, up and over a little bit, and you can use either side you want to face up or out. This is just how I am doing mine. I'll just work it and fold it up and over so that it takes the shape of my clay inside. I'm going to take my tissue blade and cut off a little triangular piece. And this is so that when I bend it up and over the top of my clay in the middle there, that it doesn't bunch and leave a bunch of clay kind of scrunched up. You'll see as I go along here. You'll want to do that on both sides. Just cut off another section over here, and then I can begin folding it up. And I did decide that it was a little bit too long, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut off a little bit of the top section there, because I want it to roll back and kind of look like it's a can opened up or peeling open. You can use a tool or your finger or whatever you want to do to roll it up and back and play with it until you get it looking however you want it to look. Do want it to look kind of aged and weathered, so I cut away a little bit more of the clay and kind of ripped it a little bit in some spots just to make it aged. Just continue on with all of the pieces that you're going to cut. I'll just show you this corner here. Just going to cut away a little section. And again, this is just so that when I fold it up and over, that the clay doesn't get all bunched up. I just want it to kind of look like it's all peeling away from the clay. Like the white clay in the middle is just kind of busting out of it. Really just play with it and experiment and see what you like. Or maybe you don't like this direction and you want to kind of do it a little differently. I'm just here to help you generate some ideas, folks. Just keep going around all the way around the clay until you have completed this step. And this is mine. I think it came out pretty good. Looks aged and kind of old. Again, I'm going to take some of that copper alcohol ink, and you can use your fingers or a paintbrush and put a little bit on there. And I'm going to add the highlights just to give it a little bit of a color pop and bring out some of those pretty colors of that copper. You can put as much or as little as you would like on. It's totally up to you. It's your project. You make it beautiful. And that's kind of what it looks like. I went around the rim and the edges where it was cut just to give it a little bit of a pop. And I really like the way it looks now. And that is the back side. And those are the scraps that I saved from earlier. Just mixing it up until it is all blended. Rolled it into a ball, and now I will flatten it, first with my fingers and then with a roller. And again, just putting a little bit of that copper alcohol ink on there. Once it's dried, I will cut it in half, and I'll use half for one side of my necklace and half for the other. This is the leftovers that I cut away from that piece a minute ago. That too, I will cut in half, one for each side of this black clay that I cut in half. I'm going to flip it over so it is black side up. I'm going to cut that scrap clay down a little bit, kind of mirroring the same image as the bigger piece I just made a minute ago. And again, I will place that directly in the middle of my clay. And basically I'm going to kind of do the same thing I did with the larger one. First going around and making sure that it comes up and over the top. And cut away some clay so that it does not bunch up. And then begin rolling it up and over to give it that aged and weathered kind of a look. And again, I will apply the alcohol ink all around the rims to give it that nice as you can see, it kind of brings it to life. I like that. Ooh, that is beautiful. And you can age it a little bit by just taking the edge of your tissue blade and kind of scraping away some of that ink that you put on. I think that adds quite a bit to it. And I made one for both sides. And I'm going to make little connector pieces. I'm going to make eye hooks with some beads on it as connectors for each of my pieces. I just made a hook on one piece and I made another hook. Connect those together and then close it up. This will give you your two hooks stuck together. You can place on your bead. And then you'll want to make a hook on that side too. I just need to chop away a little bit of that metal stick. And then I can bend it and shape it down into an eye hook. And that is pretty easy. Next, I have an eye hook, which I will open up. And connect it to my other eye hook. And close that up. Then you can put one end into one piece of your necklace, and the other end will go into the other side once it is baked and assembled. For now, you can leave this here. And then to get those to connect in there after we bake them, I'm just going to take some stick pins and press them in where they will join together after they are baked, which is what I'm doing right here. And then to make my little beads on a stem, this thingy right here, and you can really do whatever you want at this point. It is yours, you can decorate it how you want, but I'll show you how I made it. Pretty easy. You'll just need a metal stick pin, and then just start stringing on all of your beads. Once you have your beads on there, if you need to trim away any of the excess stick pin, just do that. Bend it down and make a hook. And then connect another hook on there. And I'm placing that right at the top corner of my little side pieces. Just be careful when you press it down and in there. You don't want it to go all the way through to the bottom to come out the back. You put your finger back there and you can see if it's coming out. So those pieces will all connect to my bigger necklace once it's baked and everything's taken care of. I'm going to use this necklace and kind of cut and chop it up and use pieces of it. And you can save these end pieces, this side and the other side of the necklace, for the necklace that we're making here. Just set those aside for now. And I'm just going to use one of these black ropes. I'm going to make an X shape. And to do that, I'm going to use this toothpick that I've cut down because it's roughly about the same size. And I'm going to do that to the two side pieces for the necklace. Just poke a hole pretty deep into the clay and then move it around so that the hole is pretty large so we can fit our string in there after we've baked it. And you'll want to put one on each corner. And you'll do this to both sides of your necklace. And just make sure you have everything in place and ready to bake. After baking, you can remove all of your stick pins and toothpicks and just start gluing in the permanent pieces. Before I completely assemble my necklace, I do want to put resin on my pieces. Don't worry about getting it in the holes at this point, just put a nice good coating of it on there. And then you can just take your toothpick and clear out the holes before you put it under a UV light. After curing, go ahead and put a little bit more resin on there, and this will make it more of a domed shape. And again, you can clear out the holes before you do your UV light if you got any resin in those holes. After it's cured, I will place in my rope, and I'll use this toothpick to kind of tuck it into that hole. I'll place a small little dab of UV resin right there at the top of the hole and cure that so it stays in place. I'll chop off the rest of the rope, and then I'll need to tuck that inside of the other hole. Again, just use the toothpick to get it in the hole, put some UV resin in there, cure it, and then put your crossways rope on there. Next, you can continue to glue in all of your eye hooks. And I will start assembling my necklace. I'm going to use another one of those necklaces. Just need to cut off both of the ends. To get the rope to go through the crimp bead, I'm going to cut off a little bit of the rope at an angle. As you can see here, that will trim it down a little bit so that I can fit it inside of there. And it still was a little bit tricky to get that in there. But honestly, at this point, again, you can kind of decide however you want to assemble it. You don't have to do it this way. You can also use a chain. Once you get it stuck inside of there, you'll just want to crimp that into place. Cut off any of the excess frayed piece of the rope. You'll do the same to the other side, and then to the other 3 pieces of rope on both sides of that. Like that, so both ends will have one. And then I'll just put my crimp bead cover over that, also a clam shell. Then I'll use a jump ring to connect each of the pieces of rope to my necklace for hanging. And voila, I am done. It's assembled, it's resined, it's beautiful, and it's done. I actually had a lot of fun on the journey coming up with the idea and then making this. I hope you enjoyed it, came up with some of your own ideas, and I would love to see them if you want to find me on Instagram, Love Anything Art. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!